I'm very much bullish on this Q4. The reason is because we spent the better half of our lives mastering the ability to persuade people to take action online, right? That's literally what we do. And Q4, holiday seasons, people make those decisions whether they have money or not. Look at history, right? We have a debt economy. Like the whole system is built to make this happen. And we are the instruments that facilitate that. And I know that a lot of people would look at that and say, point fingers and say, how could you? It's what we do. I do it unashamedly. I do it quite well. And I'm proud of that point. When I look at an opportunity like Q4, irrespective of a lot of the macros, there's always going to be wins to be had. There's always going to be an opportunity to be strategic, to find that angle, to be a marketer.
D2C marketers, let's get real. How many hours have you wasted searching for brand influencers only to come up empty-handed? It's time to stop spending time searching, scrolling, and haggling with influencers and start using creator marketing with #paid. With #paid, you can find your perfect creator match for your brand in less than 10 minutes every time. Getting started is easy. Just select your audience, campaign objectives, pick from a short list of creators, and hit run. It's just that easy. There's a reason why #paid is the #1 rated influencer marketing platform for D2C brands. As a D2C listener, you can even get credits for your first campaign. Just go to go.paid.com/DTCpod to get started. Welcome to All Killer No Filler. My name is Eric. This is the D2C podcast, and I'm here with the Pilothouse Brain Trust. We've got co-founder and CEO Dave. We've got Cam, and we've got Nate. Welcome to All Killer No Filler, boys. Today we're talking about Q4, biggest time of the year, little trepidation in the market right now. How are we viewing Q4 2022 in terms of the opportunity, Nate?
Well, I always think Q4 is a massive opportunity. Obviously, look at 2021. People weren't really expecting that, and it turned out to be, our biggest Q4 ever. One trend we've definitely been seeing this year specifically is that, with the turmoil, I guess, in the markets, some of the larger brands that have retail presences have been pulling digital budgets at least a little bit, or at least, spreading them out a little bit more to less DR specific channels like Facebook, TikTok. And I think you should see that as an opportunity for small to medium sized businesses that are super digital first, to kind of take some market share in Q4 when these big brands are pulling and focusing on retail and some of these other less DR specific channels.
Could be a big opportunity this year. See the same thing, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much bullish on this Q4, as I have been on most Q4s, and I probably will be on the foreseeable future. The reason is because, we spent the better half of our lives mastering the ability to persuade people to take action online, right? That's literally what we do. And Q4, holiday seasons, people make those decisions, they take those actions, whether they have money or not. You just have to look at history, right, of the fact that we have a debt economy. Like the whole system is built and designed to make this happen. And we are the instruments that facilitate that. And I know that, a lot of people would look at that and say, point fingers and say, how could you? It's what we do. I do it unashamedly. I do it quite well. And I'm proud of that point. So when I look at an opportunity like Q4, irrespective of a lot of the macros, there's always going to be wins to be had. There's always going to be an opportunity to be strategic, to find that angle, to be a marketer and really create an outcome.
That sets you up for the rest of the year in a lot of ways, right? I think that's the big theme here is get in the black in Q4. Don't be too timid. I think your point about people's consumer habits is really valid. And it's like, even if there's a little trepidation in the market, people have been trained for a decade now or more that Black Friday is the time that you make these kind of purchase decisions. And so, even if we're headed towards further economic troubles, this Q4 is probably, right in the heat of things where they're not going to be, it's not going to be pivoting on a dime. It's not going to be really low. It's going to continue in the same trend that it's kind of continued, even if there is a little trepidation.
I agree with that.
Dave, how do we talk about Q4 at Pilothouse with our clients?
I think there's a lot of hype around it, right? Q4 is the playoffs for us, right? It's the harvest for so many DTC brands. They build up a big year, and they end it with this huge consumer intent period. In many ways, it feeds into this annual cycle of a DTC brand where, a brand really can fill the war chest of cash flow in that last quarter. And they got to be really smart about how to plan for that and how to, move into the following year with that. I think one of the big things I'm hoping to discuss here are what are some of the strategies that we see DTC brands use to be successful leading into Q4, as well as aftermath of Q4 as it relates to the macro.
I think you bring up a good point, and it's called Black Friday for a reason. Black Friday originally was about how companies can use this time period to make enough sales so that they get into the black, potentially compensating for other parts of the year. I know, obviously at Pilothouse, our goal is to work with clients so that they are acquiring customers profitably all the time. But how much should a brand sort of lean on Q4? I think there's probably a lot of trepidation kind of going into this Q4, given where we're at with customer sentiment. But yeah, how do you advise brands to kind of go into this in terms of spending?
Spending is an interesting one because we're a performance marketing agency. We think about spending not in terms of budgets, but really following the money, right? So we think of it in terms of open-mindedness, right? So if you're going in with a plan to scale on, Meta, and maybe these days you're uncertain about that, our advice, and maybe Nate and Cam, you can get into this. Our advice is expand onto TikTok right now. Do your tests early so that come Q4, when the spending is going to be increased, you've got more data to actually be more fluid and dynamic with your spending decisions. We always want to push the spend to what's performing best, whether that's on a campaign level, a channel level, and we generally find your overall spend efficiency is going to be more efficient when you're mobilized that way.
You agree there, Nate?
Yeah, I think the dynamic piece is really, really important too. I see a lot of brands, especially larger brands, with kind of set budgets and maybe shareholders to report to. They come into Q4 and even just the whole year with set budgets for each channel. And I think that can really hinder profitability and efficiency, like Dave's saying. So it's super important, especially in Q4, when the gas pedal is going to be down all the way, to make sure that you're fluid and can take a step back and say, okay, we're going to pull some budget from here, push it here. It'll help brands be a lot more efficient.
And do you think, like, one of the things, I was actually just talking on a podcast with someone, and they were talking about making paid social work, and they were talking about readjusting their ROAS perspective a little bit, where like they ran a bunch of ads, their ROAS wasn't where they wanted it to be necessarily, so they turned it off. But then back when they looked at their attribution software, back in the light of day, they realized, wow, paid social actually worked a little bit better when you zoom out a little bit more. Like, how to balance, how do brands, what's your advice for brands trying to balance profitability in Q4 with this idea that Q4 sets you up for the rest of the year, because you're going to acquire more customers in Q4 than in any other quarter for most brands, and that should have effects throughout the rest of the year, as we're saying, as you acquire new customers. If you're doing your back end CRO stuff right, if you're doing your SMS and your email right, you should be able to turn them into, ideally a good chunk of them into longer paying customers. How do you balance profitability with sort of investment in Q4?
I think it really comes down to knowing the value of your customers, the value of your customers that have purchased, the value of your lists. If you have a good idea of the LTV of a customer that purchases one product, and you have a plan to convert that person over time on more products, then you can really set yourself up for success by driving first-time customers at a high volume in Q4.
Nice. Anything to add there, Dave?
Yeah, so most brands by now should have already ordered their inventory for Q4. Maybe smaller brands are still in the midst of doing that. What's interesting is when inventory decisions are being made this year, I think there's been a cloud of uncertainty around a lot of brands, right? So there's been this question of how bullish are we going to be for Q4, and therefore how much inventory are we going to order? And I think that decision that was made, now or several months ago, is going to need to be reflective in the Q4 strategies, right? If you ordered a ton of inventory, you're going to have to spend more to generate the sales to sell out your inventory, especially depending if you're in perishable or whatnot. Whereas those brands who have ordered less inventory because they've been maybe skeptical about whether it's going to be a big Q4, buying strategies, content strategies, promotional strategies need to adjust to that new world. And I think in any cases, I think there's some fundamental strategies I want to talk to. One, velocity, right? Velocity is this super important concept of performance marketing, especially on paid social. It's, a wise person once taught me, it's not just speed. Velocity is the marriage of speed and precision. If you only have speed, that can be sloppy. If you only have precision, that can be sluggish. When you get these two together, that's where the magic happens. And that needs to happen at the campaign planning level. That needs to happen everywhere. We're coming back to this idea of dynamic spend. It's all about having velocity, having open-mindedness to distribute and follow where the activity is. So for example, you got a campaign that's testing one angle and you got another campaign testing another angle, and maybe you're testing these angles in anticipation prior to Black Friday to find out what's going to work this year, right? You don't know. You can anticipate what could work. You could say maybe it's a BOGO, maybe it's a 20% off site-wide, maybe it's a buy one, get one 50% off, and obviously mapping out your contribution margins of all these different offers. Testing those prior to Black Friday and having that velocity to just get out there, test, move on is really what we see as a commonality between brands that thrive irrespective of the macro.
And then within that velocity, you want to have the velocity of creatives in order to support each initiative, right? So within variations within a campaign, essentially, in order to find that winner, even within that angle.
Completely. Maybe Cam could speak to how, Cam, what are you seeing from brands that are...
I think one thing that people need to take into account in terms of content is mobility and preparation. The Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and Q4 period is really intense in terms of content to be prepared. So when you're thinking about your promotion schedule and all these things that Dave's discussing, it's going to have some long tail effects on the content that needs to be created to support all these campaigns. And some of the biggest learnings that I've had Pilothouse is shit does not go as planned, and that trickles down to your design team and your creative team, and they need to kind of be really nimble in order to support your kind of objectives and the learnings that you get in real time. So having a bit of a stockpile of content is super, super important. And I'm talking about diverse stuff. So high quality content to support all of these major foundational campaigns. But you also need to be able to you need to adjust to support from, all aspects of your funnel. So the scrappier stuff, whatever it may be. So having that stockpile and then having a system in place that kind of have mobile designers and activate your teams to be able to support kind of in that cyclical nature as you move through Black Friday, Cyber Monday is super, super important. It was definitely a big learning from some of our past clients.
And ideally, you're starting on the shoulders, and in most cases, listening to this podcast, you're starting on the shoulders of last year. You know what worked best last year. As Dave was saying, you don't know that offer or that, how you're framing things is what's going to work this year, but you should have that best foot forward to kind of lead out with to test, right?
Yeah, and I mean, depending on your marketing mix, you're likely pushing content across multiple channels. So whether you're on TikTok or not right now, you've probably come to realize that what you use on Meta is very different than what you're going to see work on TikTok or other channels. So it's going to be a coordinated effort between all of the different channels that you're pushing content on. So you need to think about that and how you're going to communicate offers and promotions differently across different places.
Anything to add there, Nate?
I was just going to say that you can do, kind of like Cam saying, you can do a lot of that testing now. Even on the offer side, a lot of what we do is we actually try to brainstorm a few different offer structures. Like Dave said, maybe it's a BOGO, it's a money, like a dollar amount off, it's a % off. And we'll actually test the exact structures that we're going to run for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. And we'll do it now while costs are cheap. We'll do it using landing pages so it's not hosted on the site, maybe using coupon codes, actually test the offer structure that works best for your product and for your audience. And then we're going into Q4 with a loaded gun, knowing that this offer will convert and will convert at a higher rate in Q4.
With a few backup rounds of velocity in case it doesn't work. Dave, you mentioned velocity. What else? What other sort of core principles are we sort of advising brands about for Q4? You mentioned velocity.
Well, on the back of velocity, I actually had a note I wanted to complete that with. Oftentimes I'm seeing brands get slowed down by various things, one of which might be the creative interpretation of the ads they're running. strategy, value bomb. I've been saying it for a couple of years now, but this idea of third-party brands, this idea of actually creating a sandbox outside of your brand where you can test, where you can have ultra high velocity. So if you're running a product, make a review site, right, where it's a page on Meta that puts some organic content on there, but allows you to now run whatever content you want, obviously within certain bumpers, but you can actually test, for example, content creators. So often we see roadblocks get put up with brands that they say, this creator doesn't quite align with our brand, but we're saying that before we even know if maybe they could crush. And if they crushed, would that change your opinion, right? So to actually put them into the sandbox first, find out, do they crush, do they not? And if they crush, now let's go talk to the brand and actually see if we can give them feedback to actually create alignment. Because then that's worthwhile energy as opposed to the spinning of wheels on creators that we don't even know yet if they're going to win or not. So if you're a brand, create a sandbox where you can do it through either whitelisting, dark posting through other people's pages, or you can spin up your own review site or whatever. Unlocks a huge amount of testing capabilities heading into Q4.
I love it. You mentioned whitelisting, and I feel like whitelisting's never gone away, but I've just, on the podcast, I've just heard a couple entrepreneurs sort of talking about it more recently as like what ends up being a nice chunk of whatever meta spend you're doing ends up being whitelisted through an influencer's handle. Where are we at with whitelisting these days, Nate? Is it still making up a huge chunk of our meta spend?
Yeah, totally. I would say there's more of a shift to dark posting just because you have a little bit more flexibility in the content you run. Obviously, whitelisting, an influencer actually has to post that on their feed, whereas dark posting, you get access to the handles, you run your own ads through their handles. Definitely still makes up a big piece, still working best middle and bottom of funnel. People love to see faces, love to see people using products. It's just, again, that third-party validation of a product prior to purchase. And yeah, we're still spending a ton on it.
Very cool. Do we have any brands? I'm always impressed with brands that do Q4 differently. I chatted with Noble, one of your favorite brands, Dave. They don't discount. They straight up don't discount. They have they've sort of tied their own hands that way. But what they do is product launches. They'll do a big product launch. They'll do a drop. Do we have any brands kind of working on those principles where they're trying to discount less and, launch something special instead of discounting?
Absolutely. I think we've seen a big shift in that direction just overall this year from a handful of brands, especially brands that might be, having a tougher time overall. Acquiring customers is getting a little bit more expensive this year. And I feel like they've been taking that as an opportunity to start kind of shifting their brand in a different direction, maybe stop discounting as much, clean up their content, come off a little bit more professional. And yeah, so we definitely have brands that, when we're helping them with their marketing strategy, when we are shifting away from, sales and promos, we do look towards product launches and, hype building and list building to build up to some moment that can drive that high volume of revenue like a sale might. So definitely working with a lot of brands doing the same thing.
Which speaks to the idea of building up audiences and lists to squeeze during seasonal moments, right? So every brand needs to be leaning into that. So when the going gets tough, and if you're unable to drive profitable sales, at least make sure that spend is increasing your lists, your actual email list, your SMS lists. And really that comes down to making sure whoever your media buyers are thinking, what is the conversion rate to email on the pages that we're sending to, on the funnel that we're sending through, and can we add more strategic opt-ins, for example, more strategic value props to get on the list so that cost per acquisition is going to get better over time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Brands should be list building all year round, and that doesn't even necessarily mean running lead gen campaigns trying to build lists. Oftentimes the value of those lists aren't as high, but like Dave is saying, when you're running your purchase campaigns on Facebook, on TikTok, whatever it is, you want to be evaluating the cost of your email subscribers that are coming in from those purchase campaigns. So like Dave's saying, make sure that your media buyers are aware of the cost of email subs that are actually coming in from purchase campaigns, and then do things on site, like Dave is saying, to try and bring that cost down, especially leading into Q4 when, we all know that costs on platform get jacked up a little bit in Q4. you want to make sure that you have people off platform that you can hit with your offers and drive revenue.
I was just doing a podcast with one of our speakers at this upcoming mastermind we're doing at C-Suite. Was speaking with Taryn, and she was mentioning how this year they're really on top of things. They already have a lot of their creatives. They have their content calendar. They have their influencer launch sort of schedule built out all the way for Q4. Whereas previous years they were really kind of running into it and kind of doing it on the fly. Where, like, not to put pressure on our listeners here, but where in the timeline are we at? On August 16th or whenever this podcast releases this week, what should our listeners sort of already have done at this point, and what should they be trying to do over the next couple of weeks? Maybe Cam, from a creative perspective.
I mean, it's so cliche, but preparation is key at this point. So if you haven't already, try to map out, whether it be in a calendar, Gantt, whatever it may be, map out your campaign. So understand what your offers are, or what they're, your plan A, B, and C. And then start to work backwards from there. So in terms of what the visual components are going to be, what the language is going to be, document all of that for all of the things that you want to push. And then the step below that is thinking about, okay, what does it actually mean for our team to produce that content? And then index it, make sure it's organized, make sure it's ready to go, make sure it's accessible to your entire team. If you're working with creators, do the exact same process. So where do your creators funnel into all of those messages or campaigns that you're pushing? And I think if you're starting that process now, you're probably on the right track. If you haven't, start to gather your team together and think about it and get organized. But those are the things that jump out at me.
On top of that, I think, just on the, maybe channel specific side, you should, like Dave said earlier, you should already be testing your channel mix. You should be trying to figure out your most efficient marketing mix. Do that early and then be fluid and be ready to adjust that as you go into Q4. You should be list building. You should be testing your offers, at least, starting pretty soon here, testing your creative styles, like Cam said, and then prepping your inventory, like Dave mentioned early on.
Yeah. Guys, thanks for coming on All Killer No Filler, the D2C podcast today. We're going to be doing a series of episodes on Q4 prep across the different departments over at Pilothouse. So this first one just kind of sets us off with the theme of this year's Q4, which is LFG, just like it is every Q4. So stick around and stay with us as we go through Q4 prep for 2022 across all departments. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you're not getting the D2C newsletter, you can subscribe for free at directtoconsumer.co. And if you want to learn more about Pilothouse's all-killer, no-filler services, take off to pilothouse.co. I'm Eric Dick, and this has been the D2C podcast. We'll see you next time.